Hey there, Beverly Hills 90210 fans. It's now time to dive deep into an episode-by-episode, character-by-character, song-by-song account of the making of your favorite zip code. So sit back and relax because it's like totally time for the Beverly Hills 90210 show.
Well, here we are on the Beverly Hills 90210 show, joined by Lindsay Price, a.k.a. Janet.
Hi.
This is super exciting. Connie's with us this week. She's representing all the fans. She's been pulling the questions from the message boards and all this stuff. Right off the bat, I should let you know that when we talked about doing season 8 to 10 episodes, your name kept popping up as the most important that we had to talk to.
What?
Because you came into 90210 at an interesting time, right? There was a lot of turnover and cast was leaving and all this, but I always felt that you brought the stability that the show needed to get keep it going for the next 2 years.
Oh my God, that's so sweet of you to say. It was strange. It was strange for me because I grew up. I graduated in '94, so I guess I was a year behind where the gang was. And so in the beginning, when the show came out, it was like my everything. Like it was my, all of our sort of weekly ritual. By the time I got on it, thank God, my fan hysteria had died down. Otherwise, I wouldn't have been able to speak on the show and that kind of thing. And it just sort of snowballed into something that kept me there for a few seasons. But I hold those years really fondly in my heart.
I also graduated in '94, so
I'm
right around the same time period of you. But I can't even imagine. So you were a fan of 90210. How did it come into your world to audition for the show?
I had been living in New York. I've been an actor since I was really young. But at that point, I was sort of it was in the early 90s and that where there weren't a lot of characters, people of sort of diverse backgrounds. I was always playing the friend or, sort of like a B storyline or C storyline type of character. And I'd been in New York doing soaps. And I decided not to go to college. I put college off because I wanted to go and just continue acting. And I got this audition to go read for Mr. Spelling. And I was kind of we'll see. We'll see. And it turns out that they cast me. And in the beginning, I was sort of doing things in the office, here's your envelope, Brandon, or I'll refill your coffee. I was the secretary, But at that time, that's kind of what in my mind and in my experience, I knew that I was going to have to kind of build up and sort of find my way at that time as an actor.
Well, you're a fan of the show. So what's it like going into the room and meeting Aaron Spelling? That had to be a pretty big deal for you, yeah?
Massive. I think every young actor at that time knew what a giant opportunity it would be. For some reason, I just kind of had steely nerves at that age. Maybe it's youth. I mean, I was really only 19 or 20, I think. And I just I didn't have the nerves that you would think that a person would have, and they were just so kind. That was a really warm room to walk into. It was always I always felt like as I walked in, they were rooting for me. I'd been in a few times. Sometimes you just get a feeling too, that it's sort of meant to be, or that they're warmly receiving you. I think I knew that, it was going to go well.
So here's the first scene. I have a clip here of the first. I think this is the first on-screen thing that you did with them.
Okay. So it's true that I don't have a lot of experience, but I know computer layout and I'm good with graphics and I'm a real quick study.
Huh. No kidding.
Yeah, small presses, I really believe in them. Massive circulation and fancy offices, they don't impress me.
Well, that's very good.
I always root for the underdog. I like to be able to smell the desperation and desire on the page.
She can smell it. Is it that obvious, Janet?
No, I meant, you must be rewriting just up to publication, which is okay with me because I don't mind redoing a layout if it keeps the paper fresh.
So, I mean, you get thrown into, you're a fan, and here you are with Jason Priestley, Brandon, and Steve.
Yeah.
You remember filming some of those earlier scenes?
I remember it vividly. I remember that day. I remember that scene because she, Janet was filled with nerves and talking a mile a minute. And she was sort of, presenting her best self to these guys, and I felt very much the same way. So it kind of worked for me. It worked in my favor.
So where along this line do you find out, like, okay, we're bringing you on to be, a part of this story and, just a part of the show?
So this is season 8,
Yeah.
right? Okay. So well into the season, I realized that we had a really nice thing going in the Beverly beat there. There was this very sort of like snappy, fun, humorous dialogue. I kind of fit really well into that dynamic between Brandon and Steve and what was going on at the Beverly beat. I was that female voice. And it almost felt like this sort of satellite show. It was sort of like this kind of funny, sort of satellite show to a really great show to begin with. And towards the end of the season, they started to sort of lay in, I guess it was the reunion episode where I jumped in and I said, I'll go with you to the reunion. And we shot the final scene when Steve comes to the door and says, I'm sorry for embarrassing you or hurting you. And I left being like, I don't know if I'm going to come back. Like, I'm not sure. And at the wrap party, actually, Mr. Spelling got up and said that Randy Spelling, watched that final scene and said, Dad, you should really make her a regular. Like, it's really special what she's got with Ayan. And I found out at the wrap party that they wanted me to come back. So
that's pretty amazing.
Wow. That's the story. Yeah.
The reunion episode is so awesome. I sent these to you. Did you get a chance to rewatch that one?
I did. I mean, it's just like, I was telling my husband, I was like, it's so bizarre because officially that was long enough ago that it feels like a different person. Like, I'm like, I remember that girl, but it was so long ago. It's almost like the memories are sort of like, fragmented. It's so bizarre. But anyway, I'm still really proud of like the work I did, like even as a young actor, and as much as I grew, since then, I was just giving it my all.
Yeah,
I was just like,
and it comes through. I think it shines through particularly in that episode, like the stuff that you do. I get what Randy Spelling is saying. You know what I mean? There was a special moment there with you and Steve at the end of that episode. What was it like working with Ayan?
He was so incredibly supportive, and all along I always felt like he was rooting for our characters to go the distance. I think Ayan has such an incredible comedic timing, and I didn't know it at the time, but I had sort of comedy in my veins, and we just had this great banter, and we had so much fun working together. And I think we both just sort of energetically had this really nice rapport, both professionally and personally. True gentleman, total professional, and he was really fun to play with.
But what's interesting about Ayan too is like I do think that you guys get there's a ton of great comedy, but the soft stuff that you guys do, like the nice dramatic tones, people I think forget or underestimate Ayan because he delivers something so beautiful, particularly in reunion. I know he does all the funny stuff on stage and he's naked and all that stuff, but at the end of the episode, that tender stuff, I think people don't notice that he does a lot of that beautiful stuff, and you brought that out of him, though. I think.
Oh, thank you. He really did. He would always surprise me, and I think as an actor, your greatest strength and your greatest gift is what the other person gives you. And if you're willing to listen and just really be open and respond to it. And he had like truthful moments. You can always feel it if it's not truthful, and it always affects your performance if it's forced. And he worked really hard. He worked really hard through the seasons to, make sure that he brought his best work to the scene. And he always did,
Yeah.
I was never surprised because I was used to working with him, but it's funny that you say that because a lot of people are like, whoa.
Well, you guys do like really awesome, funny comedy, and I love that stuff. But I think that's what makes it work so well when you have these soft, tender moments, is because everybody can sort of relate to it. And I think for people that followed the show, seeing Steve's heartbreak, right? Previous to you, there was Claire and Hilary Swank's character and whatnot. Like and then there's Janet, who sort of, I don't know, brings some stability to Steve's life, and we get to see him sort of like shooting for something that's really important in the love angle with your two characters. Also in that reunion episode, you get to kind of work with Gabrielle Carteris in that, right? Which is another here we go fan moment, right?
Oh my gosh. I mean, the fact that I was there for the reunion show was just like, it blew my mind. I couldn't believe I had several moments throughout my 3 seasons there. I was like, this is so bizarre like that I'm here right now. And that was one of them. And I just, I remember feeling like as an actor, I deserved to be there. But I remember feeling like as a person and a fan, I was not worthy. You know what I mean? Like, and they were all, at that point, they were all so, I think, really excited for that like reunion episode as well.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
What was Jason like? You had a lot of great stuff with Jason early on too. Jason Priestley, obviously.
Yeah.
What was he like to work with in those early days?
He's such a generous and kind person. The set was always, I mean, I don't think I've ever since worked on a set that was so professional. Like he's such a movie star, he's just such a professional actor, but he's just a really kind guy and fun. Like we had so much fun. And I was I was kind of like a late bloomer. I didn't hang out with a lot of boys around that time. I was sort of like an underdog, and I got to like hang out with those two most of the time, and he was so complimentary and supportive of everything I was doing. So it gave me a big boost for my young ego at the time.
Yeah, totally. I don't know how much you remember the show, but prior to you, there was an actress, Emma Caulfield, who played Susan Keats on the show.
Yes, of course.
Yeah, I figured you knew. And she said that she had such a crush on Jason.
Yes.
You know what I mean? And then she was in that storyline that like she really got herself wrapped up.
For sure. For sure, like in the early days, I was definitely a Brandon fan. I was Brandon. Well, I know a lot of other girls were Dylan, but yeah, he honest to God, like thank God enough time had passed for me. Otherwise I wouldn't have been able to function. I mean, like he was my ideal man. He was the guy. Of
course. I think that's awesome. And then you're getting to work with them all the time. That must have been a lot of fun. There's a lot of like things that happen in the series where, Jason leaves the show and there's some switching around. Was that difficult? Is that difficult as an actor, or to get you kind of used to like castmates and then they're gone and now we're bringing new people in? You were in a very interesting time period. What was that like for you?
I was aware that it was an interesting time period. I was also very aware the whole time I was there that it wasn't that even though I was a series regular, I knew it wasn't I didn't have ownership over the show. Do you know what I mean? I showed up to do my work and I made really good friendships and I was always just so stoked to be there. But I don't think I felt the changes as the other cast would feel, because I still kind of considered myself like an interloper, I do remember when Jason left, it was like, well, then who else is going and what is the show? And then Luke came back, And
what was
he like? Oh man, he is. I mean, talk about like, he was the most infectious energy. He was just this incredible, warm, like generous guy, and I mean, he was just such a beautiful spirit. And fun to be around, and the most like down to earth and relaxed guy I've ever met in this business. And I don't know exactly how he managed to pull that off with how much they had at such a young age, he was a miracle of a person.
It was a nice transition too, with Jason leaving and then, Luke coming back in. It sort of helped, I think, steer the ship as to where it was going. I would think. Yeah,
absolutely. It felt like another sort of like one anchor went and another one just quickly was, placed down. So.
Do you remember the energy, like Luke's first day back on set? Do you remember what that was like, or were you there?
I'm not sure if I was there the first day that he was back. I don't really remember, but I do remember feeling 100% at the table reads like a really special, like re-energized feeling, you know. I wasn't so much I didn't really know like the behind the scenes of why people were going and staying.
Right.
You know, I didn't really know the details of it, but I was really excited when he was coming back. I mean, he was gone, and then this re-entry was such an interesting thing to watch.
Another switch is that Tiffany Thiessen leaves at some
Yes.
point. But what was she like to work with?
She's still one of my really good friends. She is, she's just like the real deal. You know, for me, I'm not like a drama girl. I never got into like any of the drama, and for some reason, like it doesn't really come to me either. The drama, I think I kind of like keep my head down and do my thing. And she just always felt like all the girls were buddies to me. But she is, I think, because she was sort of a child actor as well. We might have had a lot sort of to begin with in common. And yeah, I love her. Loved her then, love her now.
Yes, we would love to have her here. So if you can put a good word in.
I'll tell her.
You knew I was going to say that, right, Connie? Yeah. All right, let's talk about survivor skills as we're waiting for our friends to pop in here.
Okay.
That's some real fun stuff with you and Ayan, you know, camping and all that stuff. Do you remember shooting that episode?
I remember it like clear as day. I think that's around the time that I started to feel like super, super excited about my position there at the show. I was getting out of the office. There was this like relationship brewing. And to be honest, except for the soaps that I was on when I was a teenager, I'd never really had been given the opportunity to play this sort of romantic leading lady, you know.
Yeah.
And I was ready for it. I was so ready to do it. And couldn't have had a better partner than Ayan.
Yeah.
And we had a blast. I remember specifically, first of all, like I just recently told my kids we were camping, and I was like, they're like, have you ever seen a grizzly bear? I was like, as a matter of fact, I have. The most famous grizzly bear ever. I think that guy was in more movies than any of us combined. That bear. And then I remember specifically shooting that scene in the car at night where we had the little mini vodka bottles from the mini bar. And Ayan was so like clear, and his performance was so like focused. And I felt, I think that was the moment I knew I was like, this is going to go the distance. You know, it just felt like really cool chemistry.
I think even from watching it, that's when you, as a viewer, you feel like this is a thing. This is a real thing with Janet and Steve. Hey, so I want to drop in a couple of your friends in here. We have Bryn and Gretchen, who wrote.
Hi.
Hi, Pete. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too.
Yeah, nice to meet you.
You guys were the writers of season 9 and 10. Am I saying that right? You were a big part of the story arcs of those couple of seasons. When did you guys jump into the 90210 fray?
It's the beginning of season 9. Yeah, we were part of the writing staff starting in season 9, and it was our first job ever. We 2 weeks before, I was on unemployment and Aaron was an assistant at a desk at Universal, and it was really the best it was a dream job. It was fantastic. It was really great.
How about for you, Aaron? What was that like for you jumping into the 90210 world?
Well, you know, Gretchen and I were, I think we had the dubious distinction of having been young enough. God, it's been a long time. Lindsay still looks exactly the way she did.
Stunning, right?
Gretchen. Well, I had grown up watching the show. So Gretchen and I were around the age of the cast members, maybe a few years older. So I had grown up watching the show until, you know, the college years or thereabouts. And so it was pretty incredible to be able to write for a show that you had watched growing up. That was such a formative experience. So it was mind-blowing because we were, you know, we had been trying to get hired and looking for jobs. And I was an assistant at Universal, and Gretchen, like she said, was unemployed. And we went, you know, in a matter of like 3 days, we went from interviewing with John Eisendrath and Laurie McCarthy, who were the brain trust behind the show at that point, to meeting with Aaron Spelling in his office, you know, a couple of days later. So it was an incredible experience for us.
That's really awesome. In terms of writing for Janet and Steve, how much? We just were touching base on survival skills that episode. I'm curious what it was like to write for Steve Sanders, and then also what it was like writing for Lindsay, and that chemistry between the two of them as it was developing through those couple of seasons that you were there.
They played so well together. You guys were so great. Just going back and watching now, the chemistry is so strong. It is there, and they both are very good at dramatic turns and they're both very funny. So that was really, really fun to work for. And it was a different sort of, like, even though like Steve had gone from being the, the sort of yuck playboy, and now all of a sudden, like, you guys brought in this whole sort of like maturity, still age appropriate and everything else, but like a different phase in life than everybody else. And it was really interesting to watch it too. But you guys could do everything. Drama, give me a tear, like, make me laugh. And it was so much fun. It was so much fun to write for them.
For Aaron, I'm curious what you loved about Lindsay's performances in those couple of seasons.
Yeah, tell me.
I mean, and I'm sure you all talked about Lindsay's trajectory on the show, but I mean, you can always tell when someone starts out like Lindsay did, like the character Janet did, when an actor begins in a role like that and then becomes a series regular, it's because there's something not only really special about the actor's talents, but there's also something very, very special about the actor and the actor's personality. And the thing that was amazing about Lindsay is that she can do anything. And I popped on right when you were talking about some of your daytime experience. And one thing that Gretchen and I have noticed is that we actually think that actors who come out of daytime are some of the most facile performers. They're able to make any line work, and they're able to cut to the emotional truth of things really quickly. Like, they're like surgeons. And and everyone on the writing staff just adored writing for Janet and loved Lindsay. And first it was like those sarcastic one-liners and stuff like that. But when everyone realized, and she showed us, what she could do with dramatic things and the way she was able to forge that chemistry with Ayan, we loved writing for her because we knew we could give her anything. And I think the thing that's really so Gretchen, I don't know about you, but we haven't rewatched these episodes since they were on television. No. I mean, I had forgotten so much of what we had all done together. But watching, the survival skills episode was sort of like that little turning point in their relationship, which was then going to just take them for the rest of the run. It was cool to watch the romance grow, and they played it so well. So, we were really just always confident in whatever we gave to Lindsay, she'd be able to do. And it was super fun to get to know her as a human being. And that's why, every show we do, we're always like, where's Lindsay? What's she doing?
Seriously, so much of our career since then has been just trying to get back to work with Lindsay again.
I'm ready. Let's go, guys.
We're ready.
We're ready. We'll send some stuff over later. Yeah.
There you go. Hey, Lindsay, how close are you to the character of Janet? Are you guys similar or different, or?
It's funny. So Janet and Steve, their dynamic was that, Janet wasn't the type of girl that Steve would have gone for, and I think, like I said, I was a late bloomer. I never really thought I was like the girl that guys wanted to date. I kind of always put my brains and my humor on the forefront because I was very not shy, but just like I hadn't stepped into my like femininity yet or anything. She had that vulnerability, but she kind of kept that wall up. And I think at that time I was the same. And it's interesting too, because like at a certain point I realized, whoa, the character is being written like in my voice, like in my wheelhouse, so to speak. And that was that was the first time that's ever happened for me. And Gretchen and Aaron, you guys like gave me the best stuff to do. Strangely though, like I couldn't even keep my plants alive, and they were on a self-timing watering system. And then they give me the storyline to be like a mom and, like pregnant. And that was really hard. And it's strange, like going back and watching, I'm like, oh my God, I'm literally going through some of those issues now, in my 40s of like going back to work and worrying about like the kids and the babies. And, there were some really like modern, some themes then that play today for me, some things that it's sort of like a little bit of a wrinkle in time to go back and watch it. I was like, how did I pull that off? Because I did not know what the hell I was doing at all.
The other episode that we talked about was the Luau episode, which I really think, there's so many things that Janet and Steve have to deal with, right? And their parents. It becomes both Rush is no peach himself, and Janet's parents are very conservative. Did you relate at all to that story at all, or
at the time, no, but it was really, really funny watching it back now because although my parents aren't racist or like purist in any way, my mom's from Korea and my dad is a Pasadena white guy. Mm-hmm. So at the time when we shot that episode, I understood what it might be like, but it wasn't anything that I'd ever experienced before. Like my parents, when they got married, they were a biracial couple that was like really, it was out of the norm. They were sort of pioneers of biracial couples. However, when my husband and I met, we sort of did a little bit of the cart before the horse as well. And my parents are traditional in that sense. And it was, we had our own little moments to navigate, with the baby and then getting married and that kind of thing. I do think that anytime you bring two families together, there's always like a little bit of you got to figure out your new family dynamic. My personal life isn't as complicated as maybe Janet and Steve's, but it was funny to watch it now, to watch back.
For Gretchen and Aaron, do you remember writing some of that stuff and the issues that Janet and Steve were going to have with their parents, and where did you guys develop some of that stuff?
Well, that script was, I think that was written by Tyler Bensinger, was that right, Gretchen? Yeah, I think he wrote that. I mean, the cool thing about working on 90210 and the way that John and Lori had set up the room and stuff is that, and John, who was running it, the writers we were in that writers room every day from like 9:30 to 6, and so everybody had, and because we were doing so many episodes, I mean, we were doing, if we weren't doing 22, then we were doing 26. I mean, that's unheard of now. I mean, now it's hard to do 8. I don't know how we did it, but so that said, it was great boot camp because we were all in the room at all times helping break stories, even though the individual writer would then peel off. I had forgotten about that story. The Steve and Janet and Rush and Janet's parents story. But it was kind of, the one thing that I do remember was like, oh, this is interesting that her parents are the ones who are so adamantly against this. But I thought what was nuanced was that it was actually about their, what I didn't realize had been done, because I think I was just too young, even as a writer, to know, was the way that they turned it so that it was really more about her parents' disapproval of Janet and her choices than it was about the race card. Frankly, I mean, that was sort of that. Yeah, go ahead.
You know what? Honestly, Aaron, just like when I watched back, I remembered feeling like not only did I not understand the race card as much, but maybe back then also I was very like, I worked so hard against my race. Do you know what I mean? I worked so hard to just be an actor and not be like a diverse cast. At that point, I'd only played like, I was like the illegal immigrant cook's daughter, and like I'd only played like those roles, and this was my chance to just be an actor and be a woman and not like have that be a part of it. And when it came up at that time, I was like, oh, I just wish they would have, like not had it be a non-issue. So it was hard for me to sort of like connect to, because I had weird feelings about it. But in the scenes and in the moments, that's exactly what I connected to. The idea of having disapproval from my parents, which I'm sure, you know, many a times I'd felt. So,
yeah, it was interesting because as I was watching too, I mean, the thing that you know that no one can deny. I mean, the thing that's amazing about the show is people still want to talk about it. People still love it. It obviously like touches something inside people in terms of the, like at a deeper core. But you know, when you watch those episodes back, it was another age. It was another time of television. The way we wrote it, the way we produced it. And it was just sort of that, and to Aaron Spelling's credit, like he often wanted to do these issue episodes, which can come off a little creaky when viewed through a 2020 lens. Like as I was watching, like nowadays we would call Lindsay and we would say, is your mother Korean?
right.
Okay, what's Korean? Like, because there's a difference.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, she's not Japanese, and I, you know, and that's not speaking against anybody or anything that we were doing on the show, but like times have changed. So when you watch it now, I was just like, wow, this is feeling a little bit. I don't know where this is going, but again, like it was very cool the way the story was broken because it was more about what was happening between Janet and her mom and dad and those disappointments. And that's why I think the show resonates still, like, because you think it's headed down. And so maybe we're telling the story against sort of a creaky paradigm, as it were, or just like a little less enlightened at the time, but it still hits on a personal level. And that's when
I think like the rush stuff really doesn't age well. You know, the stuff with him in the restaurant.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
I know.
Right.
He's like, you know, maybe you should date around. Maybe you should, you know, think about,
Yeah, I mean, he's awful.
He is awful in that scene. I mean, you know, he's a wonderful actor, I'm sure, you know, but there's a great scene in that episode too, where you and Steve or Ayan are having like this debate in front of Tori, you know, and Tori's, you know, always great to like lighten the mood, sort of. What was it like working with Tori?
I just love that girl. She is, she's everything that, you know, people would probably not think that she is first. She's open and inclusive and goofy and self-deprecating. And I really clicked with her. And she also has like got a pretty strong and focused sort of comedy chop sort of thing about her. So every time we had a chance to play together, it was really fun. I'll never forget like being at the table reads and you guys would write us stuff and I'd, you know, land a line or whatever. And she would always be the first one to laugh and she'd laugh the loudest. And I remember just being like, oh, for A, that's a good feeling. And B, it's such a great feeling coming from her, you know?
Yeah. That's awesome. What about the actors that played your parents? Leslie and James, right? Yeah.
They, well, James is like, you know, a legend. He's you know, an incredible actor and certainly like it was awesome to have him there. And what was the woman's name that played my mother?
Leslie. Ishai?
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
I remember she was just so she was
Here they are.
so gracious and there she is. And we look a lot alike too. I mean, that's some good casting.
It was good casting, yeah.
Maybe I am Japanese, you guys. Because we look alike.
I love the little bit too when James that your dad walks in and sees Steve's shirt, you know, in the luau, you know.
Yeah. Like
I forgot about those shirts. We gave those were given out to the writers and the cast and the crew, and I had forgotten about those shirts. And when I saw it, I was like, I wish I still had it.
Yeah,
I wish I still had mine.
Yeah.
Someone's gonna make one now. A fan will be passing them out.
It will be in our store shop very soon. Yeah. That's funny. But do you remember shooting all that luau stuff? Like the you know, it gets pretty comedic you know, at some point there when you know Steve's
it's pretty silly, right? Like when Steve's mom's girlfriend shows up and
then it's his sister and all that.
It's just got like it hits
company to me. Like,
it hit the max there. It's fun. It was really fun.
And also a luau in the beach house. I mean, like, it didn't it end up being in the beach house? It was on one of the sets always. We're like, moving it inside. Let's move it inside.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that had been maybe written as exterior.
Oh, yeah.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
You're right. And then it was raining. It was like you guys made it rain or something. But then we had to like
a clap
put
of lightning.
rain.
Yeah. And we made it on budget. Yeah.
I was going to ask you guys, Aaron and Gretchen, about writing some comedy like that. You know, is that fun to do inside this? Because so much of the 90210, what we think about the moments are like these, you know, the serialized drama stuff, the soapy stuff. That I think that's what we all kind of resonate. But the comedy stuff definitely is helpful. Did you guys like writing some of the comedy stuff for the series?
Absolutely. I think first of all, everybody there is funny. So I think they really enjoyed it too. And so it all came together in such a wonderful way, because I think it like any like great high performance, like horror, whatever, everybody wants to, even as writers, we like switching it up. We like doing different things. And it, you know, we laughed a lot in that writer's room. I mean, it was always, there was a lot of humor there, as even if we were breaking the stories. Cause like Aaron said, we were there for so many hours a day that you kind of had to you had to laugh. And it was also great, because I feel like a lot of the directors too, they're like, even that episode has such a farcical element to it that I think it was written that way. But at the same time, it would get it, like, I don't know how much, I mean, we watched a few of your episodes, but I don't know how much you guys talk about really how the sausage was made. And we weren't on set a lot. I think Aaron and I used to beg all the time. Please, can we go up to set? We want to be on set. But we were breaking the stories and writing. So like, it was such a treat to get there. So a lot of times when we would watch dailies, which we did at lunch every day, we knew what we had in our head, but then it would just be raised to this next level, because the energy was so great and was so much fun, and they really nailed it. I think, you know, one of the great things about the show is how it can so adroitly go back and forth between the drama and sort of the, like, you know, and I'm not even being precious about this. I think there's a lot of lesson teaching in a good way in television, because the other thing I was remembering watching the show was how much story was packed in each episode. It's really mind-blowing. There is so much in an episode, and I think people, even the fact, going back to what you were talking about earlier with the Luau, like, I really, even though we probably dedicated less than 20 pages to that story because other stories were being serviced in that episode, it was so wonderful to see how Steve and Janet came together, and they understood so quickly we're the family now that we have to take care of. And I feel like I don't care if you're, you know, 7 years old watching that show, or if you're 47 and you just need to be, I think there are like reminders and nice things in there to sort of like remind people that, yeah, your family out here is your family, and you want them in your life. And that message was sent too. Like, we want everybody in our life, but it's also sort of to remind folks that, like, when you're making this commitment and moving forward to be a family, that's like standing together. And it was just, I was like, wow, there was a lot done in this like 55 or 56 page script. It was really, and all of them are like that. It's very impressive.
And then the next episode we all kind of watched was Baby You Can Drive My Car, which I love. I mean, I love this episode. I mean, the whole idea of the scavenger hunt being the way that they did their wedding and all that stuff. For Gretchen and Aaron, I'm curious, do you remember coming up with that or being in the writer's room for that?
Well, the inspiration for that actually was John Eisendrath's 40th birthday, which he turned 40 when we were all working on that show. And he was really great about just including, you know, everybody and stuff. And he had a scavenger hunt for his birthday party. And it all culminated with ending up at a dinner. So, and this was back when the Grove didn't exist. And we met in a park at the farmer's market where the Grove is now, sort of like where the Nike store is now. There used to be, it was just a parking lot, just a complete parking lot, that whole area. And we met in the center of that deserted parking lot where the Grove is now. And that's where it began. And then we drove around town and all ended up at a party, at a dinner for him.
Mm-hmm. That's so funny.
Yeah. And so everybody thought, well, that'd be a fun way to do a wedding, you know, a wedding thing. And so Gretchen and I, who were really kind of would always nerd out, we had the episode was initially intended as a true shout out to the mythology of the show. So we had we had written in Amanda Pacer, the Christmas Lady house. They were actually going to show up at Amanda Pacer. Do you remember the woman in the slumber party in season 1 who tormented Kelly and Donna?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
They were going to end up at her house. And we had tracked down the actress in Las Vegas who played Amanda Pacer. I mean, that was how nerdy, like we were going deep.
I love that.
We were going deep. Like we were doing like shout outs to all sorts of little bits of mythology from past episodes. And the script I think we had written an outline, or maybe the script had even been written with all of that stuff. And it got up to Mr. Spelling and he was like, no one's going to remember any of this. And Gretchen and I were like, no, but they will. They will. And
all of it.
He was just like, no, I don't want to do that. And we were like, but we found Amanda Pacer. She lives in Las Vegas and she's ready to go. Imagine getting that phone call, like somewhere in Las Vegas, your phone rings and it's 90210 and we'd like to, anyway, that's how it began, was sort of a fun scavenger hunt trivia sort of thing that would have been a little bit more interactive for the fans. And it just got, from no better, no worse, it got turned into, we just had to do different clues and different things. And so, that morphed into different stuff. But we had fun working on that. We wrote that with Laurie McCarthy. What would often happen is when you would see like a story credit for one writer and a teleplay for another, that was usually indicative of the fact that we were sharing a script. Like, and what we would do back then is like the story payment was a certain amount and the teleplay was a certain amount. And we just kind of just took the credit. It didn't even matter. Like we'd be like, okay, we'll do the story. So that was actually, those episodes were, mainly co-written when two writers were, with story and teleplay. But we had a ball doing it, and it was, it was fun. I mean, I think the wedding, it was at the Huntington Gardens.
Yeah.
And I do remember being there. I do remember getting to go to set.
We got to go. We were so excited.
Yeah.
Lindsay,
we remember the wedding. We were so excited.
Do you remember the wedding with Ayan? Do you remember the wedding scene?
I sure do. It was my first wedding ever. I still consider it. Yeah, I do. I remember there was a whole to-do about the dress. The fashion was always a part of the show, and the way that the girls looked and stuff. Ironically, like I had gotten into really great shape before that season. And then I found out that I was gonna be pregnant. I was like, "You've got to be kidding me!" I should have kept drinking wine and eating cheese all hiatus, But I remember a lot of fittings for the dress, and it was a big deal. And then I got that dress on, and it was just there was a comedic amount of belly. And I thought in my mind, I was like, "There's no way!" It was as if it were my own wedding. I'm like, "There's no way this isn't going to be funny. It's going to be just you won't be able to feel the heart of the ceremony." But it was so sweet, the visual of seeing them up there, at the Huntington Gardens, just kind of doing their thing. It was great. Yeah. I remember being a little bit weirded out because I got super caught up in the vows. I remember being like, that was weird. Am I really married? Because I feel married.
A little clip.
I love that
Here's a little
Steve's
clip.
wedding.
What was that, Connie? I'm sorry. What did you say?
I love that Steve's wedding is so simple because, his 21st birthday is a big thing. Everything Steve does is so big. And then his wedding is just so sweet and so beautiful. And I love that.
Very cool. All right. Here's
my father was a Presbyterian minister. He passed away about 1.5 years ago. And he gave me that ceremony. That was something that he would use. Yeah, we would, this was also just right on the, you didn't Google stuff quite yet. You almost did, but it wasn't. Right. It was right on the cusp of that.
Google. It must have been some other terminology.
Yeah, I don't even remember.
No, you would ask your writer's assistant to do it, or you would do it yourself.
I mean, and those were the days. Those were the days when you would have a writer's assistant whose really responsibility was to dig up stuff like that. They were almost a researcher. So if you were doing a crime story, you would have a contact at the police department. You would and this was just the old or you'd have to, if you did something about science, you'd find find an expert at USC. But when it came to the wedding stuff, I remember calling my dad up, and he sent a bunch of his stuff along. So it was a sweet. I'd forgotten that. So when we watched, it's amazing what comes back to you. Yeah.
So Lindsay, yes, you are married, Ayan.
Yeah,
I knew it.
Yeah.
I'm gonna be, yeah.
Showing the clip here. I want to, what I loved about that episode too is that everybody got to do so much fun stuff in that Baby You Can Drive My Car. And Connie mentioned this to me before we came on about even Luke gets to play here,
Oh, yeah. I love funny Luke.
I was going to ask you guys, because I was talking to Lindsay about working with Luke earlier. For you guys, you got him to come back, you guys didn't personally, but he came back to the series, and then you got to write for him when he came back. What was Luke like to work with, and do you remember him kind of getting to have some fun doing some things like this?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like I'm gonna start crying. Yeah, he was great. He was great. And by the way, the fact that he did that is hilarious. Like, that is so not only not Dylan, not Luke. To like put that on.
Totally.
So when I like even watching it this time, I'm like, wow, yay, Luke, you did that. That's awesome. But no, he was like probably one of my favorite people ever to work with, because his spirit is so welcoming and professional, but at the same time knowing exactly what's really important in life. And he was also somebody, like, it's funny because Lindsay's somebody that we have worked with again and we have seen again through the years, and Luke was someone else too. And it just so happened that we were on location once and up in Vancouver, and the phone rang and it was Luke, and he heard we were in town and he wanted to get together. And we hadn't seen him since 90210, and it was like 4 years later. Or we ended up like all hanging out in the same, I'm pointing in the direction like you guys can see it. There's this pub near all of our houses that he would go to a lot too, and we would see him there. And he just, I mean, I got to say, he just had a presence and an ability to sort of be calming and fun, and never made you feel like you still had so much to learn, or what it was a real pleasure working with him and getting to know him and being part of an episode that was so exciting that he was coming back to the show. That was the first episode of television Aaron and I wrote.
Wow.
And, we introduced the character of Gina, and we said goodbye to Tiffany's character, and we brought back Luke. And it was, I think it was the last 4 seconds of the episode, but that's always gonna be part of like our television history. And it's such an honor, not only to like be on part of a show like that, but also to be have that episode be our first.
It's an iconic moment for sure, that episode. I'd like to explore that with you guys at some point.
Yeah. He was also, as that picture shows, the thing I loved about him too is he was so comfortable in his own skin, and he made you feel comfortable in your own skin. And there aren't a lot of actors like Luke Perry, who would have said, yeah, put me in that onesie, I'll totally do it. But like, he didn't. A lot of actors, their persona is caught up sometimes in what they will and won't do on screen, which is why sometimes, yes, of course, it's cheesy, it's jokey, it's silly,
yeah.
But he sold it, but he did it. And that was what was nice about him, is he was not that person who was like, I'm not going to look cool, so I'm not gonna, I won't do that. There's a lot of times.
As he was cool. He just was cool. Yeah.
He was. Truly. He just was. He was one of the most lovely people.
Lindsay, I want to show you the clip here of your wedding to Ayan.
With this ring,
I make you my husband and join my life with yours.
and with this ring, I do the same. By the authority vested in me, I now pronounce Steve and Janet husband and wife.
God, I still get emotional with that. Really incredible stuff. I asked you, but I mean, getting into that stuff when you're reading those lines, and you just really got to a place where you were marrying Ayan. Is that what like, how do you get?
Yeah, but also, like, when you invest so much time playing one character, you have to completely root for that character, to root for Janet. And, I had to sort of be her biggest advocate. And so, there was just this moment I remember of being like, oh my God, she did it. She was able to get past her fears. She was able to get past her parents. She was able to get past his, like, having to grow up, and they did it. And it's just like, you know, as an actor, if you're in the moment, you're kind of like, you know, experiencing it. But I did have a little bit of an out of body experience, like realizing how great it was for their characters.
Yeah.
And then, you know, when I rewatched it, I burst into tears too. So there's
Same.
something really there's something truthful about it, which is multi-layered, you know?
Yeah, it's so beautiful. And then, you know, we do get to the series finale, and you and Steve are married and, you know, adjusting to this new life. Was it tough for for you, Lindsay, that the show was coming to an end and that you weren't going to be able to play in that field anymore? Or what was that like, coming to the end of the series for you?
I was so sad, you know, because it was the first time that I had a long run like that. And I also, like, I didn't go to college. I didn't have like a normal high school experience. Being there with those people every day, the cast and the crew and the writers, and having that consistency in my life was massive for me. Like, it was a real game changer, you know. It was truly the formative years for me. So when it was over, I didn't really know what I was going to do next. I felt quite lost, to be honest. I was 20, I think was like 19 or 20 when I started the show. So I still had like a bunch of stuff to experience, but I didn't want to go. I didn't want it to be over.
Do you remember what that was like to film those last episodes?
Yeah, it was so fun. Because we did, it was Tori and Brian. It was Donna's bachelorette party.
Right.
And there was a sense on the set that day, like we were actually going to party, because it was sort of the end of the show. And Tori, I think, brought real Jello shots to the set. And it was like after we only had like little bits to do. Like, there was no like big scenes, and we had so much fun. I remember there was some weird like wig wearing. There was like the random cigarette break. Like, we were just all sort of, you know, enjoying this moment. I think everyone was dealing with a lot too, but it was over, you know.
Yeah.
And then of course the wedding was epic. There was some sort of multi-layered thing going on there too, you know.
Sure.
Yeah.
Hey, I'm going to turn it to Connie. She's been trying to get a bunch of questions for you from our fans. They were so excited that you were popping in, Lindsay. What did you got, Connie?
I've got quite a few questions. First of all, everybody's so excited. It looks like Janet is a fan favorite for sure. The first question I have is from Lori. And she wants to know, how did you feel entering the show in late seasons? You know, was it hard to come on to such an established cast? Did you feel welcomed?
I felt incredibly welcomed. Yeah. And I know that there's other stories, and I've heard other stories about, you know, walking into a set, or even this set. Like, I'm a professional, keep my head down and do my job kind of person. Like, I've been like a professional guest star at that point. So I knew how to get in and out and be respectful and that kind of thing. I was really, really pleasantly surprised how much they welcomed me. And I guess it's sort of like one of those things where you get what you give, you know. I was there to do my job and support their show, because it was their show, you know, obviously. I was very nervous though, because I mean, like, you couldn't have picked another show that would have been a bigger, like, I think I was only a fan of that show at that point. You know what I mean? I grew up watching it. So very, very strange. Yeah.
Totally. What else you got, Connie?
Evan Schwartz wants to know, what do you have most and least in common with your character?
Most in common, I would say, like her sort of wit to defend herself, protect herself, and least in common is that I'm not Japanese.
Yeah. Okay. Such a great answer.
So that'd be it.
Yeah.
What else you got?
Alex wants to know, what was your favorite Janet moment?
My favorite Janet moment. Oh, it's so hard to say. We did some really fun stuff when we were locked in like a freezer when we were investigating like some ghosty thing.
Love that.
And we shot it at the Ambassador Hotel. And I had a moment where I'm yelling at him and I'm telling him what a jerk he is. And then we have one of those classic, like, kiss you to shut you up kind of moments. I remember loving that time. I also really liked when she kind of became the breadwinner in the family and went out there and sort of had to deal with having a baby and being the one that was away all the time. I mean, that was a very cool sort of, especially today, sort of relevant sort of women's lib kind of, you know, storyline. And I loved playing it.
It's not something that you saw too often then too. So your character was something that was, you know, got that opportunity. I thought that was really cool to see, for sure.
It was cool, especially because Ayan, like, you know, his character for all intents and purposes was like a guy's guy, a dude's dude, totally. You know, and he struggled with it, but it was really beautiful to watch, like, how they navigated that. I like that storyline.
What else you got, Connie?
I've got a couple of questions from Zara Brown. She's a very good friend of the show.
Yes.
Were you close with any of the co-stars during the show, and do you keep in touch with any? I know we touched on Tiffany, but
yeah.
Yes, I keep in touch with Tori and with Jenny. I mean, via social media, you can be like in touch with anyone. I mean, it's been such there were years that, you know, we didn't stay in touch, but now recently, yeah, for sure. And Ayan as well. It's crazy. I mean, social media, I mean, that's one good thing that's come out of it for sure.
I'm curious to know about with the reboot. Were you ever contacted about that?
No. And that's because the show was definitely about, you know, that show was about sort of like the beginning.
Yes.
And I you know, and at the time I was also I think I was working on something else.
Yeah. But it's interesting because I always kind of hoped, you know, when you think about like a little fan fiction, I always hoped that Steve and Janet were still together, you know? So when the reboot came back, I was like, there's no way that Steve wouldn't be with Janet still. They would be.
They would be together.
Where are Janet and where is Janet today?
She's like, you know, they're still together, but I think at the end of the series, weren't they about to start a new venture? Like they were going to open their own paper.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I imagine that they did that and then sort of pivoted into something pretty successful online or something. And probably a couple of kids.
Yeah.
Looking good, still in love.
That sounds right. That sounds right.
Right? Like that's what happened. That was what happened.
That was one of Zara's questions too.
Oh, was it? Oh, very
was it?
Perfect. Yeah.
Got that out of the way. Yeah.
You know what's so funny? Also via social media, the baby Maddie, that little actress, the little baby actress that they used to play Maddie, she contacted me, or the mom contacted me. She's like, you know,
you're my mother.
A full grown up now. Yeah, she's like, and you're my mother. No, she's like a grown up now. And that was my first I'm so old moment. Amazing. I was like, that's never call me again.
Yeah.
Memory. How dare you?
Yeah.
You got maybe one or two more for her, Connie?
My last one isn't really a question, but it's a comment from Brandon Harris. You are his favorite. I'm just going to read the comment verbatim. She's easily in my top 5 favorite characters. Maybe my favorite woman character on the series. I don't really have any questions for her that haven't been covered. Just let her know that even though she came on way late in the series, she was still an asset to the show and made the last 2 seasons worth watching, in my opinion. And maybe let her know I was bummed to see her left out of the reboot last year. Honestly, my only complaint about the reboot is that I felt Lindsay earned a spot there and should have been there.
Oh, there you go.
Aww,
that was very nice.
So much. That's super
do you still get recognized, or do people still talk to you about 90210? Does that come up in your world a bunch?
Yes, it does. And I love it, you know, because it really makes me, I feel great about being part of a show that was so iconic and stuck around for so long. And a lot of people are sort of watching it again, you know, or for the first time. And now it's like some retro show, but they're like, wow, what a cool show. And it's fun that it's stuck around. It's probably the only thing that I've done since 90210. I've done like a million pilots and shows and series and things, you know, nothing, I haven't had anything that's been on as long as that show. So I love when people bring it up because makes me remember that I've been a part of something successful.
You're on over 70 episodes. That's a lot. Yeah, I looked it up yesterday. I think it was 71 or 74. I can't remember the exact, but it was a lot.
That is crazy. I didn't realize that.
Mm-hmm.
So, Connie, thanks for telling me that.
We did get a lot of questions too about being married to Curtis. How amazing is that, and all that, right? Wasn't there one there, Connie? What is it like being married to Curtis? I'll let that go in there. He's such an iconic, amazing chef on TV and all that stuff.
He is. He's a great guy. I ended up with a good one. He's very secure. And, he's used to being in a kitchen and sort of like dealing with a lot of fires and sharp things. And he makes a great dad and a great partner that way. Really, really funny story, though. Ayan approached Curtis at a club, sort of the last club that Curtis probably was at. Like, I think I either was pregnant with Hudson, my oldest, or I just had him. Mm-hmm. And Curtis is like the most pop culture, like he doesn't know anything. Like he was born down under. Right. And so Ayan walked up to him and said, we got the same girl pregnant. And Curtis was like, do I have to fight this guy? Like, what who's this guy? Because he didn't know. And Ayan's like used to being like Ayan Veering, like everyone knows who he is. And Ayan's like, no, Lindsay. And he's like, yeah, I know. And they have this thing, and they actually had a conversation about it because Curtis and I, again, like we got pregnant before we got married, and Janet and Steve had sort of the thing. So they had like this beer and they had like a conversation about it.